The night in Montecito was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes even the most confident heart race. Prince Harry stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his sprawling mansion, gazing out at the ocean that shimmered under a pale moonlight. It was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where the world couldn't reach him. A place where he and Meghan could finally breathe, free from the relentless glare of cameras, judgmental headlines, and the unending scrutiny of a public that claimed to love him but seemed to take more pleasure in tearing him down. And yet, tonight, that sense of peace felt like a lie. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The storm wasn't outside. It was inside, and it was coming fast. Just hours earlier, an explosive revelation had dropped into Harry's lap like a bomb with a lit fuse. Piers Morgan, the man who had made it his life's mission to expose every crack in the royal facade, had done it again. This time, it wasn't a vague accusation or a whispered rumor. No, this was tangible. Photographs. Clear, undeniable, and devastatingly compromising. Meghan, the woman Harry had pledged his loyalty to, was pictured aboard a luxurious yacht with none other than Prince Andrew. The images were subtle enough to escape casual attention, but explicit enough to ignite a firestorm in the tabloids and social media alike. Harry's mind raced. How could this be happening now? How could Meghan, his partner, the mother of his children, be entangled in yet another scandal? This time with one of the most controversial figures in recent royal history. And more importantly, how would the world react when these photos went viral? The mansion, once a haven of calm, now felt like a gilded cage. Every room echoed with tension. Every hallway seemed to carry whispers of impending doom. Staff moved carefully, their steps tentative, as if aware that the prince's inner storm could erupt at any moment. Harry himself felt like a man walking a tightrope over a pit of sharks. One misstep, one wrong word, and everything he had worked to build. The life in Montecito, the image of a happy family, even the fragile peace he had found in exile, could shatter in seconds. The question that gnawed at him, the one that kept him pacing and staring at the endless waves, was simple yet terrifying. What now? Harry had made choices before. He had walked away from a life most would kill for. He had rejected the privileges of his birthright, endured endless criticism, and faced humiliation on a global scale. And yet, nothing had prepared him for this. The collision of private loyalty and public scandal, of love and betrayal, all in the form of a single photograph. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the media was already circling like sharks. Tabloids were drafting their headlines. Social media was primed to erupt. Every royal commentator, every self-proclaimed expert on palace affairs, would have an opinion. The narrative would spin out of his control before he even had a chance to breathe. Harry knew it, and he feared it. But what made it worse was the timing. Montecito had been his sanctuary, yes, but it was also a gilded cage in more subtle ways. The public might see luxury, gardens, infinity pools, and endless privacy, but behind the walls, the scrutiny never stopped. Staff whispered. Neighbors speculated. Even in exile, there was no escaping the constant tension between what the world wanted him to be and who he truly was. Harry's mind flicked to Meghan. How was she handling this? He had seen her fight before, her public composure, her ability to turn scandals into narratives she controlled. But could she handle this? Could they handle this together? Doubt gnawed at him, and for the first time in months, he wondered if the life they were building in Montecito was nothing more than an illusion, a fragile bubble that was now about to burst. The yacht photos were more than just pictures. They were a symbol of everything Harry had been running from, everything he had been trying to leave behind in Britain, and everything he had hoped to escape by moving to California. Suddenly, the past had caught up in the most unrelenting, intrusive way imaginable. It wasn't just about Meghan and Andrew. It was about perception, reputation, and the impossibility of controlling a narrative when the world wants you to fail. And then came the messages. Phones buzzing relentlessly. Journalists, insiders, contacts, all reaching out. Some were loyal, some curious, some outright malicious. Every notification felt like a drumbeat of doom. Harry's security team urged calm, reminded him to stay grounded, to think rationally, but rationality seemed irrelevant. The images had already started their viral journey, and the damage was already inevitable. Harry's gaze drifted back to the horizon, where the moon kissed the waves. He had faced the press before, faced betrayal, faced moments that could have broken him. But this felt different. The combination of intimacy and scandal, the violation of trust, the way it threatened not only his personal life, but also the image he had fought to maintain. It was unlike anything he had encountered. And yet, in the middle of the tension, a small, almost imperceptible thought emerged. What if leaving was the only answer? What if Montecito, the place he had once thought of as a refuge, had become a trap? Could he walk away without losing everything he had tried to protect? Could he leave behind the life he had meticulously crafted, the life that symbolized both freedom and exile, and go somewhere else, anywhere else, where the storm couldn't follow? The idea seemed insane, reckless, and entirely necessary all at once. And as the minutes ticked by and the night deepened, Harry realized that a decision had to be made, quickly, quietly, decisively. Staying put was no longer an option. Every second in Montecito now carried the weight of exposure, betrayal, and inevitable confrontation. The ocean outside reflected the moonlight, calm on the surface but restless beneath, mirroring his inner state. He had come to California to escape the past, to find peace, and to reclaim a life free of relentless scrutiny. But the past had followed him in ways he couldn't control. And the future, what the world would think, what the media would say, what Meghan would do, was uncertain, volatile, and dangerously unpredictable. For a moment, Harry simply stood there, motionless. The wind whispered through the open windows. Somewhere, far below, the waves crashed against the shore. And in that silence, he understood something critical. The life he had built in Montecito, the sanctuary he had fought so hard to create, might no longer be his. And just as that thought settled in, his phone buzzed again. A single message that would shatter any lingering illusion of security. From Piers Morgan. A brief line, cryptic yet unmistakably threatening. The world is about to see the pictures. Brace yourself. Harry felt the weight of the words in his chest, cold and heavy. He had faced scrutiny before, had navigated the storms of the press, had endured countless controversies. But this was different. This was intimate, public, and damning. And more importantly, it was unavoidable. He knew what had to happen next. But stepping out the door, leaving the mansion, and abandoning Montecito entirely, that was a choice that would have consequences far beyond anything he could anticipate. And just as he made his decision, a sudden knock echoed through the hallway. Not from the staff, not from security. Someone he hadn't expected. Someone whose timing could change everything. Harry froze. The sound seemed louder than it was, reverberating like a warning. He realized, in that instant, that nothing in Montecito, or anywhere else, was safe anymore. The sun rose over Montecito with a deceptive calm, as though the universe itself were conspiring to lull Prince Harry into a false sense of security. The sprawling mansion, with its immaculate gardens, infinity pools, and panoramic views of the Pacific, looked like a paradise in every sense. From the outside, life seemed perfect. A prince who had walked away from royalty, a wife admired by millions, and children growing up in a sanctuary far from the relentless glare of tabloid cameras. But appearances, as Harry had learned over the years, were nothing more than fragile illusions. Inside the house, the tension was palpable, though it moved almost invisibly through the rooms. Staff scurried about quietly, careful not to disturb the delicate equilibrium that Harry had tried so hard to maintain. He moved through the spaces with a restless energy, the kind that comes from knowing something is off, but not yet fully understanding what it might be. His eyes flicked to the corners of the room, to the doors, to the subtle shadows that the morning light cast on the walls. Every detail mattered. Every nuance seemed charged with meaning. It had been a week of peculiar silence from the outside world. No urgent calls from the press, no unexpected visits, no explosive social media posts. For a man whose life had been defined by constant attention, the quiet was disorienting. Was this peace real, or was it merely a prelude to the storm he knew was coming? Harry tried to focus on his children, who played in the garden, laughing and chasing each other under the California sun. Their innocence was a balm, a reminder of why he had made the choices he had. Yet, even in those moments, he felt a creeping anxiety, a gnawing sense that something was lurking just beyond the horizon. The world he had left behind in Britain had a way of following him, of inserting itself into his life even when he thought he was free. He thought about Meghan, about her ability to maintain composure in the face of public scrutiny. She had always been a force of nature, capable of turning criticism into a shield, capable of navigating storms that would have crushed others. But even she was human, and even she could not control the inevitable. Together, they had built a life that was both a refuge and a fortress. And yet, for all the walls they had erected, the cracks were starting to show. The morning passed with a deceptive normalcy. Harry went through his routines, checked in with his security team, and made small talk with staff. Everything seemed routine, almost mundane. And that, Harry knew, was precisely when danger could strike. The calm before a storm was always the most treacherous, the moment when the mind allowed itself to relax, only to be jolted into chaos. By mid-afternoon, the tension had become almost unbearable. Harry felt it in his chest, a tightness that refused to release. He wandered through the mansion, his mind replaying snippets of news reports, past scandals, and whispered rumors. Every memory seemed to converge into a single point of anxiety, the fear that the world outside Montecito was closing in on him and that there was no place left to hide. It was in that moment, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, that the first ripple of the coming storm became visible. A message on his phone, brief and cryptic, appeared on the screen. Not from Meghan, not from a friend, but from an unexpected source, someone whose involvement in his life he had not anticipated today. The message was short, almost casual, yet it carried an undercurrent of urgency that made Harry's heart skip a beat. He knew immediately that whatever lay ahead would not be a minor inconvenience or a fleeting distraction. The next few hours were a blur of preparation and apprehension. Harry moved through his day with a heightened awareness, every sound, every movement around the mansion amplified in his mind. The staff noticed the change, the subtle shift in energy, the way he spoke in clipped sentences and sharp glances. They did not know the source of his unease, only that it existed, and it was potent. As evening fell, Harry stepped onto the terrace, looking out at the ocean once more. The waves were calm, reflecting the colors of the setting sun, but beneath that tranquil surface, he could sense turbulence. He thought about the decisions he had made, the life he had left behind, and the life he was still trying to protect. Every choice had consequences, and the path ahead was uncertain. And yet, amidst the uncertainty, a part of him felt a strange clarity. He knew that whatever was coming, he could not remain passive. The storm approaching Montecito demanded a response, a movement, an action. He could not wait for events to unfold. He had to take control, even if the cost was unknown. As night fell over the mansion, the shadows deepened, stretching across walls and floors like the fingers of fate itself. Harry's gaze was drawn once again to the horizon, to the darkened ocean beyond, where the first hints of the storm were beginning to form. He could feel it, the inevitable clash of past and present, of loyalty and betrayal, of public perception and private truth. The calm that had defined Montecito for so long was gone. The storm was on its way, and Harry knew that when it hit, nothing would be the same. The morning air in Montecito carried a false sense of normalcy. Birds chirped, the ocean waves lapped lazily against the shore, and the sun's rays painted golden streaks across Harry's sprawling estate. To any outsider, it was paradise. A prince, an American dream house, a family insulated from the harsh gaze of the world. But Harry knew better. He had learned over the years that peace in exile was often the calmest before a storm so violent it could tear everything apart. And this storm was not natural. It came in the form of a man Harry knew well, Piers Morgan. Morgan's name alone could ignite anxiety in anyone associated with royalty. He was relentless, fearless, and unafraid to expose the truths that most people wanted to bury. For Harry, Morgan had always been a thorn in his side, a constant reminder that no secret, no matter how carefully hidden, could remain out of the public eye. Morgan thrived on controversy, dissecting every nuance, every decision, every misstep, and broadcasting it to millions who eagerly consumed the scandal. On this particular day, Morgan struck again. But this time, it was different. This time, the target was not just the headlines or the fleeting gossip columns. It was personal. The yacht photos. Harry first learned about them not through a staff warning, not through a text from a friend, but through the news alerts that blinked urgently across his phone. The images had been leaked, carefully curated, timed perfectly, and designed to provoke the maximum shock. Meghan, his partner, the mother of his children, was photographed aboard a luxury yacht in the company of Prince Andrew, whose own history with controversy was notorious. Harry's stomach twisted as he scrolled through the posts. The images were undeniable. The angle, the lighting, the context, everything suggested intimacy, familiarity, and a proximity that could never be explained away easily. His mind raced.